com and the director of the Houston Comedy Film Festival. We have an event coming up, our summer 2022 event in August, and we are going to talk to screenwriter Rani Deighe Crowe, who is joining us today, and she's going to talk about her screenplay Church Ladies, which is nominated for the Best Comedy Short Screenplay Award at the summer 2022 event. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's a warm morning here in Texas, but we're making it happen. And I'm just excited to talk to you about the screenplay. And the judges really enjoyed your work, rated very high on the scorecards, and kind of cruised into the nomination for this category. So congrats to you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit in your own words, basically the synopsis? What is this? What is the story about?
Um, so it's about three three very uptight, judgy church ladies at a potluck, managing the casserole table, watching. I mean, it's a short. It's a short, and it was designed. I was writing it sort of during COVID when I was trying to design films that we could maybe shoot under the new world circumstances and with limited budgets, and so that sort of started to influence like the stories that I was coming up with. So it's the sort of judgy church ladies gathered in a casserole table, watching, a woman bringing the casserole dish up to the table, very, judging her clothes, judging her walk, judging the way she's looked. And, what we originally see is just how judgy they are. And, or imagining like, maybe I'm in my head, she's a divorcee or something. And, they really catty. And then it starts to sort of transform into the slow mo, and it starts to become kind of seductive, and it's like they're actually lusting after her. And so the judgment is sort of turning into like these lusty comments, and sort of becomes, we sort of see the twist. There's like a point of view shift, or a shift in how we see it. um, and that's, and so like I said, it was designed to be something that we could shoot under new circumstances. Um, but it was also, sort of to show like it takes the same amount of energy. There's something still objectifying about, sexual objectification as well as, judgment, right? So where do those things overlap?
Mhm.
And also, the sort of tension between religion and church and LGBT people. Sort of, I wanted to sort of see. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Indiana. I grew up in Ohio. So that was sort of the world that I wanted to like explore in that sort of moment.
Gotcha. So interesting that you went after this topic. Well, two things. You mentioned so much about this. I appreciate the background. So during COVID, I mean, obviously you wrote something and you wanted to come out of COVID with something that was comedy oriented during such a difficult time for us. Did you find? I mean, I found during COVID that I got some of the best screenplays I'd ever seen, because I think people had time to sit down and really refine their work. Um, why come out of COVID with comedy? What was the inspiration there?
Well, I'm a full time professor in addition to making films and being a screenwriter. And my background, I'm probably going to tap into some of your other questions. I started as an actor in theater, and then I did stand up comedy for a while in New York City. And then I started writing plays, and I started doing, when I was 14, I went to see Lily Tomlin do The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe on Broadway. And that was like a huge influence. So I started kind of creating characters and doing one woman shows and writing monologues for myself, which then eventually led to writing plays and directing plays and working with other actors. And then, eventually that transformed, or that led to filmmaking and going to grad school for film. So it all kind of overlaps. So comedy is always in the background. Part of my interests and mission in anything that I make as a filmmaker, screenwriter, is to consider historically underrepresented people, and how to increase. So LGBT, a lot of strong female characters, people with disabilities, different people of color. How can I include both that, behind the camera and on screen? How can I incorporate or include or center content on those people? A lot of times, um, comedy comedy is fun to do. Um, it's coming out of COVID, and especially as a professor, you have to kind of keep making stuff and show that you're like you're making stuff all the time. I actually, because my brain was so exploded and so not knowing where the world was going, and it just felt like we kept getting these plot twists within the world. Like, now there's, oh no, now there's George Floyd, and now there's this, and now there's that, and upheaval and politics, and the killer bees there for a while. I mean, it was just like one thing after another to kind of keep track of. So every time I would it takes me a lot longer to respond um, to tragedy and drama, and things like that. So, I mean, almost everything is really something that's been in my head playing with for much longer than when I actually sit down to write it. Right.
Mhm.
So for all those reasons, this is just this. It starts with an image, right? And it starts with I was imagining, kind of starting with like an American Gothic of the pitchfork and the farmers, and sort of by the end, the sort of Picasso's uh, women of d'Avignon sort of painting, where they're all sort of like leaning over the thing, and it's sort of transition, and just the slow motion of the woman with casseroles. Something about casseroles too just make me laugh, like centering everything around casseroles. I used to have this Julia Child character that I did in like site specific performances. The Midwest chef, and she would update her casseroles for the Midwest by putting cream of mushroom soup in it, essentially. So there's something about the casserole that I also enjoy. That's setting against a table of casserole dishes. I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did. You did. That was great information. I was going to ask you, it seems like you're really drawing on a lot of different influences and real life experiences. For someone who has never, written a screenplay, someone who's never, had access to the business, or at least who maybe feels like they don't know where to start. Can you talk about your journey into the first time you actually wrote something that was creative versus just walking around with a good idea?
sure. Um,
Just like, how did you? I mean, one day you're just like, okay, I'm going to write a story that is meant to be turned into a film. How did that happen
sure.
for you?
So like I said, I started as an actor, and I originally wrote lots of monologues. So I kind of like step inside, and it comes out of character a lot of times. A character that does stuff, or like has a voice, or I have like 9 animals. So if you see any heads pop over, somebody's scratching on my chair right now. So it usually sort of starts there, and I sort of step inside of it and become it. And I usually like, what's the situation, like what is the character confronted with, and like what is the situation is often where it starts with. And it plays in my head, and I have millions of these just all over my house, and composition books. I just have like a composition book for tons of them. And
Mm.
I have there. Let's see, this one says Rainy's virtual classes, and they're all over my house because I'm really ADHD, and I always have a million different projects. And so I go to bars or restaurants or coffee shops, and I sit and I doodle and I write ideas, and I jot things down. And sometimes I start actually trying to put them into a story form or an image form, or you know, a screenplay or a play, and then when it gets to the point where it's ready to be typed, then I go and I sit down on a computer. But I have to do it, you know, hand. And then for a long time when I first started, I would also, because I did, you know, I went to school for theater, and so I you know, did the 11-year plan, where I dropped in and out of several colleges, but I ended up at Antioch College, for undergrad, and you know, we had styles of live art where we studied performance art class, where for my final project we put hamburger on a naked guy and wrapped him in saran wrap while somebody read out, the clauses from a health insurance about like how much the different body parts would be worth if there was death or dismemberment. Like that was our final project. And I did auto performance, which was basically a class in, you know, writing a short one person show based on your life. um, you know, and we did sort of devised theater, so I had lots of help. You know, I had lots of
Mhm.
like teachers and experiences that let me explore this along the way, and those were very three-dimensional. So it's very helpful to have, you know, instead of just writing and putting it on the page, they incorporated three-dimensional, like, you know, how do you set an image, how do you talk, how do you, um, do lots of things. um, and one of the things that, you know, with my own students is to get people over the idea that when you write something, that's the thing. It's not the thing. Like writing the screenplay is not the thing. Writing that first draft, the first draft is not the thing. It's usually like, even for a short film, it's usually like 10 or 12 drafts for me over the course of a year,
Mhm.
of it like coming into different ideas, at least. And if it's something longer, it usually takes longer. Um, but the first draft, it goes through many iterations, and so this idea that it has to be done or perfect, like when you first start writing it down, you're just generating content that you can then go in and sculpt, you know, or you can collage. And for a while, for a long time, when I would write something, I would then print it up, and then I would take one of my little composition books, and I would get out my scissors, and I'd get a glue stick, and I would cut it apart, and I would start re-gluing it and reformatting it, and maybe adding images, or, you know, uh, I would handwrite into it scenes that needed to be there, or I would you know, reorganize it, because I think sculpturally almost with my content, and I reorganize it.
Mm.
But usually my strongest, you know, my strongest, films or screenplays, it also really helps to have somebody that you're bouncing the ideas off of or collaborating with, because a lot of times they can, when they can articulate what you're doing, and suddenly you understand what you're doing because of the way they said it, and you weren't able to articulate that, or they want you to change something, and when you push back really hard, no, that's not what it's about,
Mhm.
suddenly you know what it's about, but you weren't able to do that in the first time. So I find all of those things are really helpful. um, but you know, just don't expect it to be good the first time, just start writing it out. And you know, think about, there's all different types of films, right? There's, and if you're looking at story structure, you know, you want the character to go on a journey or to have to make a decision, or what are they confronted with. But if you can, like, what is the problem of the film? And if you can
Mm.
say it in a way, and people's minds are like, oh, you know, like, usually if I can say it in a way, like in just like a couple of sentences, and people's eyes pop open when I say it,
Mm.
you know, like I know that that's something that I want to explore. And it's not always that I have the answer or I want to tell people this is how it is. I want to explore that, right? I want to write it because I want to explore it. So like our last short film, you know, right came out right at COVID. Quiet on Set was about a sexual assault that occurred on a film set during the filming of a sex scene, right? So so many layers of so much conflict, and that was kind of
Mhm.
our response to Me Too and all the things that were happening at that time. But
Interesting.
yeah, but like to like I wanted to know like what happens with a sexual assault that happens while everybody is watching and recording it, but nobody sees it. And and then it gets filmed for later, and then the conflict of being able to play out all of the things, the actress getting gaslit by the director and being pressured into like not being told that it didn't really happen, the people on set not sure what happened. I wanted to play out all of the things within creating a situation where I could see those things kind of play out.
Mm.
And a lot of times that's what I do is I create a scenario where I can see things played out, that I'm grappling with, in life or in the more global scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Interesting. Interesting. Well, it seems like it's writing has been an outlet for you, just a way to just kind of just get your ideas down, writing a lot of things down, just kind of getting it out of your head onto paper. I had an interview with somebody recently where they told me, if you never write anything down, you don't have anything you can fix, right? You don't have anything you can edit. And, it
Yeah,
seems like you've really kind of embraced that philosophy where it's just like, get it out of your head. And
you
that way
you
you can go
have
back.
to you have to embrace failure, and you have to like that's part of process, and this idea of like it has to be, that's just wrong. It's just you're making the raw materials, and it takes a long time it took me a long time to get there, like
Hmm.
to get there, that it's just to not, because we're so trained, especially through school and stuff, that an assignment is like, we get grades, and that it's good or it's bad, and it's just not. That's not really how it is. And to sort of take agency for your own project and not care as much about the external. What is it that you want to say? What is it that you're trying to do?
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
and what is the reaction you want to give people? It's nice when people like your work. Sometimes I make work that people hate, and that I want, that I intentionally, that I want them to hate. I want it to make them uncomfortable. I want them to have to struggle with material. Um, and sometimes that's not as fun as like a nice comedy where people just laugh and think it's really funny. But sometimes people don't get it on the first time. That's another thing that it took me a long time to learn is accumulation. Just keep making stuff, because eventually it'll all kind of start to explain, like it explains each other. It explains itself. The more things you make, the more it all makes sense, and we start to get like your language and your syntax and the world you're describing, and if that makes so, just keep making stuff. Just keep doing
Sure.
it.
Good advice. Well, Howard, this has been just an interesting conversation, and I appreciate your time today. And again, congrats on being nominated for the award. And are you planning on attending the festival by any chance?
I would love to, but money. I don't have
I
money
hear
right now. I don't even have the money to like drive out of state at the moment. It's going to be tight for a little while. We're hoping that.
it's a long trip, and most people. I mean, there's a lot of people that just aren't, that want to come that can't just because whatever thing is going on. For a while it was COVID, and then it's fuel, and then it's economy, and then there's just so many things going on in the world. But I'm glad that we're doing these interviews, and I have a chance to sit down and actually meet you. And it's a lot of times the only people I ever meet from the festival are at the festival, so it's good
Yeah.
to be able to sit down and talk to you.
Well, yeah, I'm so glad to meet you, because I've done a few of your festivals, so, and I always get these emails from you, so it's nice to actually sort of see your face and talk to you, even on Zoom.
Good stuff. Well, great to meet you, and have a great day. I just appreciate you checking in with us. All right,
Thank you.
take it easy.
Bye.